It's so funny because I mean, I've heard this, like who you're supposed to write to, or that you write to the perfect person or the ideal client. I mean, I read all the books on it, and this has been more impactful than, I don't know, I have a bookcase full of them.
Welcome to the Smart Gets Paid podcast with me, Leah Niederthal. I help women land higher paying clients in their independent consulting businesses, but I've never been a salesperson. My background is in corporate marketing, and when I started my first consulting business, I learned pretty quickly that it's about 1,000 times harder to sell your own stuff than it is to sell someone else's. So I taught myself how to do it, and I created the sales approach that I now share with my clients so they can feel more comfortable in the sales process, get more of the right clients, and get paid way more for every client contract. So whether your client contracts are $5,000, $100,000, or more, if you want to work with more of the clients you love, do more of the work you love, and get paid more than you ever thought you could, then you're in the right place. Let's do it together. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to rate, review, and share. Hey there, Leah here, and thanks for tuning in. I hope that wherever you're listening to this, wherever you are right now, you're having a great week, making some good progress on your business, and taking some time for you. So not too long ago, a client came into the Academy community and shared in Slack that she had to fire a client. And she explained that things actually started out fine with this client, but over time, her main contact just became this terrible micromanager. And really, they weren't treating my client, this woman who's, writing this, they weren't treating her with respect and respecting her expertise or her work. I mean, as she was describing it, it basically became like this toxic situation. And so despite, my client trying to make it work, in the end, she decided that it just wasn't worth it. So she let them go. And in the wake of that, she's wondering, how did that happen? Like, did I do something to make that happen? And more importantly, how do I make sure that doesn't happen again? I mean, it's like dating, right? Like, have you ever dated someone who at the beginning it was great, but over time it just became sort of toxic? I know I have. And afterwards, with some distance, you're like, how did I get myself into that situation? And how do I not get into that situation again? So that's where she is from a business sense. And that's the moment she's in, that's the headspace she's in when we have the conversation that you're going to hear in this episode. She had just let this client go, I think, a few days ago. And so the question she's wondering about is, how do I get clients that respect me and my work? And what she'll discover is that it's both an art and a science. Because working with clients who respect you is about finding the clients who are the best fit for you and then creating space for them to truly realize the value you provide. So if you've ever found yourself working with a client who wasn't an awesome fit, or who you felt like didn't totally respect you, or you had to sort of keep trying to convince them that you were doing great work, I know you're going to find some helpful nuggets in this episode. So one thing to know about this client that you're going to hear me talk to is that, without getting too specific, she's in marketing. So I want to send a huge thank you to my client for allowing me to share this conversation with you. Take a listen, and at the end, I'll come back and share a lesson that you can apply to your business.
Let's start with the first thing first. What's on your plate? What's on your mind? Anything on the scale of, on the one hand, it's something I've just been noodling on, just been toying with. And on the other, it's something I've really been struggling with. So anywhere along that continuum.
Okay. It's very timely as well, since I just lost a client, which was actually it's a good thing. And now,
why was it a good thing? Is that the one you posted in Slack?
Yeah. I don't do well under situations where I'm being micromanaged. It just doesn't work for me. I don't like it when people call my trust out in question. And I'm like, bless and release. I'm good.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So that was really good. I mean, obviously I'm in a better place today than I was when it happened, because, clients are great until they're not. So this is one of those ones where it was a learning lesson. So I was thinking about, I've been noodling on this for a while, because I've been in marketing for a long time and doing what I do it's going to be coming up here 5 years, which is great. But I feel like a lot of the times I'm just not targeting people who really appreciate me in what I'm doing. A lot of it is, I love to nurture and very maternal in certain ways. And I'm like, oh, you're broken. Perfect. I'll fix you. And I try really hard not to do that anymore, but it's still what I go to. So I end up with people who are just like egomaniacs and all the things. So I need to figure out an ideal client who's, loves what I do, but I also feel very comfortable running their business as their. I do a lot of really cool things that most don't do. And so trying to hone in on that. Like I do a really robust audit in the beginning. So like the numbers are really important for me, and then building out a strategy. But I don't want to get pulled into the day-to-day stuff. I want to be there to like really shift that. So it's a good moment. Anytime we have something that goes sideways, I always think it's a really good opportunity for me to take a look at what's happening and then figure out like where can I pivot to make this to serve me and what I want better.
Yeah, I love the perspective of using this as what can we learn from this? It sounds like there was a little bit of like sadness or anger or whatever, but that seems to be in the past or past couple of days because this was not a good, it turned into not a good situation.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm human too. I have big emotions. I try to process them in a way that's good and whatever, but I'm subject to that too. And I'm doing really much better with it today. It still plays out in my head, which is what we do. So right, I'm putting it in the right place so that I can then take it and learn from it and move on to the next thing and the healthy things that you do with those things.
Yeah, absolutely. For healthy and well-adjusted people. All right. So this ideal client who loves what I do, who talk about loves what I do. How would you know if they loved what you do?
I think my love language is typically time spent, but I'll take words of affirmation with actions that back it up. I just can't was very excited about what I'm bringing to the table. I turn over every rock in the business and help orchestrate. I'm the tool of change. Right. So there's going to be things that change, and people always say, oh, I love change. It's amazing. It's exactly what I need to do in order to grow. And then I tell them what they have to do to change. And they're like, oh, shit. That's all.
It's like, I want to change. Okay, change. No, not like that.
Exactly. So then there's a little bit of like mind finesse that we have to do to embrace change. Because as you know, and I know that if you're going to build a business, you can't run with the same, like you can't grow doing the same stuff you've been doing.
Yeah. So words of affirmation. So like you will know that they value what you do because they are telling you that what you're doing is good.
Yeah.
How else?
Or taking actions that say, yes, you said we needed to have a social media manager who's dedicated. We love that idea. We can have conversations over what that looks like as far as budgeting. Here's your budget. So like, we went from here's a concept to digesting the concept to taking action. Those are the 3 steps that mean I trust you. I believe in you. I think that this is the right movement forward. And then we do it. And then they have patience with the fact that now change has to happen and person gets trained and all the rest of that. So again, tricky, right?
Yeah. And I mean, one question I have is like the things that you tell them to do and you create the conditions, to what degree are you creating the conditions where they can actually do it? Like I'm thinking about hiring a social media manager. Does part of your work also include, okay, here's the job rec that we can start with. Here's where you should post it. Here's how we're going to vet the candidates. Okay, you're nodding, right? So this all includes that? Okay.
Yeah, it's budget. It's like, here's some top 3 candidates I think would be really good for this. If we want to go externally to like outside of my resources, let's talk about what that looks like. So there's a little bit of a buy-in to, we need to have this conversation. Let's do it. And then there's money that's allocated that we can go do that for, or do that with, I guess I should say.
Yeah. And okay, I'm just going to be asking you a bunch of questions, obsess out. And then let's talk about these like broken clients where your innate sense of wanting to help people and fix people, you find that you're wanting to do that. Maybe you're attracting it's like you're attracting bad boyfriends or something.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's say more about that.
So I was in tech for a long time, and then I worked for, and there's a lot of toxicity in that one. So I came off of that, and then I swung to the other side, which is masterminds. And there's just a lot of, there's a different flavor of toxicity that's involved in that with the egos and whatever that I encountered. And I think there's just,
you're saying like the egos in like the coaching masterminds, or
yeah, I think in some cases, right? So I found myself like in the heart and center of bro marketing. And I'm just saying I didn't really vet this out well enough. And you don't know until you're like, oh, I'll never date that bad boy again, right? You're like, it was awesome and it's so cool and their name is everywhere. And then I was like, oh man, yep. There's when things go awry and I'm getting called on every holiday and weekend.
God.
You're like, look, my contract, and I always follow up my contract once you sign a contract with, this is how I like to work. Right? It's an email that they read over and it talks about communication styles, when I'm available, what I will and will not be doing, what's in my contract versus what's not in my contract. And all of that is from, we have boundaries because we didn't have boundaries.
Yes.
I'm trying to learn that better. But what I realized is a lot of that was ignored in those specific instances. And maybe the through line here is it's me. I'm the person who's making the decisions to work with folks that are probably not the best bet. So I try to think about that and figure out where I need to go. But I've had a slew of clients that I've not loved, although I do love what I do. So it's kind of a tricky place to be in.
And I think it's the mark of a high achiever to be like, it must be my fault, right? I don't know if that's like hitting you.
I think it's because it's the mark of a control freak. And I'm fully aware that's the case because I teach that to other people too. And I'm like, look, you're only saying that because you can only control what you can control. And it feels more comfortable to own it than it does to be able to say I had no control. So there's action I can take and versus I couldn't have done anything about it, which doesn't feel good. And I don't sit in limbo very well, which is very true. Okay.
All right. These are all good things to know. And so I guess just going back to that, it doesn't have to be your fault, especially this last one. Like, how would you have known? I mean, this was a total head fake. And real quick, like how long do you work with clients? A fairly long time, right?
It usually is between 6 months and a year. 6 months is one pivotal point where we start to see progress, especially because they're generally B2B. So I'm like, look, we got to define all the things and then find the people and make the traction happen. So at 6 months, past 6 months is where you really start to see tremendous growth for the efforts that we're doing.
Right. Okay. So 6 months is like basically day zero, right? That's when you start to see growth. And then you might stay with them for a year, perhaps longer. That's a long time for them to have to show you that they like what you do and that you're an expert. And so I'm thinking about there's so many like dating metaphors and relationship metaphors in selling, but it's like you have to be the best boyfriend for like a whole year.
Yeah.
And so part of that is like, they're not going to be the best boyfriend for a whole year.
No.
First, it's impossible because you're not going to be the best girlfriend or you're just not going to be the best partner. Let's use,
Yeah. Go there.
You can't. Yeah. We'll go there. Yeah. So you can't be the best partner for a year. There are going to be ups and downs.
Yeah.
And so one thing I was just noting is like, how do you, because when you say like, how will I know? They'll be on board, they'll be bought in, they'll do the things, they'll tell me that they appreciate my work. You're sort of putting like is this working? Is this relationship working? Air quotes it's all in their court for them to tell you that it's working. And I wonder, I'm curious if we can weave in more ways, like more venues for them to give you positive reinforcement.
I like that.
And I like to, and this is just me and my own way I work and what I need, but like optimize for positive feedback.
Okay.
So things like, and again, like this would be very specific to your work, but these are just a couple of things that come to mind. So one of my favorite questions is, as I'm talking through maybe how something works or whatever, questions like, what's the most valuable part of this for you? Mm-hmm. And thinking like, how do you think this will help the most? And I'm just thinking about ways that we can sprinkle these in. And I'm sure there are other things that we can come up with for your work, but essentially don't be so good at doing the work and so have heads down with them doing the work that you don't. I want you to create more spaces for them to talk about the work and talk about you in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You're not supposed to say that.
I know, you're right. I know. This is like a huge conversation. And let me rephrase. What's a better way for me to say that? How does that sit with you?
I like it. And I like it because I think we were trained to be good little soldiers and to like, and it's such a funny thing because this is just a symptom of the bigger picture of how we're told to work really hard and work like the harder you work, the better the payoff will be. And it's not true. The
Oh,
harder you work, the better the payoff will be. And so this is a good symptom of that. That's like next level. Because the first thing is don't just put your head down and work, look up and look around. And then the next level of that is make time for somebody to give you feedback because it's a relationship and that's a good dialogue. So I like that point.
yeah. And I think the whole like good little soldiers, good girls thing, that you're right, that doesn't work. It works maybe a little bit when you are early in your career. It works not at all when you are senior in your career. Nobody just gives you great feedback and wants to promote you because whatever. And it works terribly when you're running your own business and you are your own boss. There's
Oh,
like
yeah.
nobody to like tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, that was really great. I love how you did that, me.
Yeah. You just have a conversation with myself. Amazing. Just wanted you to know. Yeah.
And so I wonder if creating a space for you to get what you need, it's
Mm-hmm.
just data, right? It's not like, let's stroke my ego. This is also data. That means that tells me that would tell you what things are they sparking to? Maybe what are they not sparking to? What's the most valuable part of this for you? Might open up, okay, actually, this is going to benefit a whole other part of this that you might have not have access to because it's a different part of the business. You know what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
if you see it as data, but also data that gives you a little bit of what you need so that you can stay in the relationship and it's
Yes.
not all on them to keep you there.
Yes. Yes. I love it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, there's like a little therapy in selling.
There's a lot of therapy in selling.
There's a lot of, I know I say that, but there's a lot of therapy.
Yep.
All right. So that's one thing, optimizing for positive feedback. But let's talk about, could you have noticed and avoided all these things in the past? These clients who like turn into not great clients. I mean, no, I really don't think so. But I do want to talk about what might be some markers of a good client and what are the markers of a bad client. Because we can talk about, and we will go through more of this like in the building block stuff, but it's good to talk about here. We can talk about ideal client, right? Certain industry, size, whatever. But what's more important in my view is like, what are the markers? What are the things that you are looking for?
Mm-hmm.
And those come out in conversations, sales conversations, discovery. I had a woman who I worked with who she's a very high level copywriter for insurance
Mm-hmm.
businesses. And we were talking about this and she said, the best clients for me, I can't be successful if the agency head has given themselves the job of marketing because they don't have a team. So I'm like writing all this great stuff and giving it to them and telling them how to use it and telling them where to post it and whatever. And they're too busy or what have you. And so we identified like, okay, a marker for her is they have to have like at least two people who are tasked with marketing who are not the agency owner.
Yep.
So that's the kind of stuff that you can listen for again.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, what would the markers be? How would you know it if you saw it?
So I love the question. I'm going to go through it with a process of elimination just because that's how my brain works. So I know I don't love it when they have like two VAs out of the Philippines who are working part-time. It's just too hard to do. I need layers so that I can have people do certain things. So I think the first one is, do they have a team? How many people are on the team? 3 minimally, because 2 means they're probably overworked and they're going to be overworked very soon. Usually the pivotal role that I know that they're ready for the next step is, do you have a project manager? So that's a good one for me.
Is that the project manager is one of those 3 people, or they have another project manager who can be tapped for this?
Great question. On top of, or they're willing to hire for that role, because that's pretty important. I think another good one is that they're looking to potentially hire a CRO. So somebody who's optimizing for conversion. So that's really important for me because I really like it to, trickle down to the bottom line. And I have budget. Because at the end of the day, I can't do anything. Tell me I don't have any budget. And if it's just like I have a gentleman who wants to talk to me tomorrow about writing him just a strategy, which is fine. And he's like, I only have $15,000. And I was like, okay, great. That's awesome. And I can give you a strategy for that, but I hope that you're going to get seed funding or get funding in some regards. Like, you're going to need to have some money, friend. It's highly saturated. Having those, I'm there to have those real conversations, but I need to make sure that they're prepared for what's going to come next. Because in marketing, if you build it, they don't come.
Yeah. This is okay. So you said a few things I just want to pull out. If one of the markers is that they have 3 people minimum, and they have a project manager. Earlier, you said, I don't want to get pulled into the day-to-day stuff, which sounds like tends to happen or at some point. Do you see how, like, if we start talking to in marketing terms, clients and vet for clients who have those 2 things in place, do you see how that will keep you from getting sucked into the day-to-day because somebody else is doing the day-to-day?
Yes.
And it's not like the admin around the world.
Yes. And I don't want to target people who are in the Philippines. It just seems to come up very frequently. But yeah, you're right. There's the head and there's the hands. I'm going to be the head. They're going to be the hands. So I like that. That definitely needs to be a marker.
Yeah. How much budget do you think in an ideal world, how much budget would be the minimum that they've allocated for marketing?
I usually say it has to be at minimum 3x what I charge, right? So on a quarterly basis, 3x, that way I can do things with it.
So this is money they would have to spend on like ads or technology, or no, technology would fall into operating expenses, but
yeah, that's a different wheelhouse and it depends on what they're doing. But yeah, I usually say 3x for non-tech. And then for tech, it's probably $500,000 to at least $1 million. And that's a big chunk.
It is a big chunk. But if you're only talking to people who have that chunk, then you can actually do the work that you want to be doing.
Right.
What else?
I think that's the major one because it's the step 1. Like, I feel like I'm back to step 1, which is kind of nice and also kind of like frustrating at the same time because I have to determine who I'm going to go after. And once I go after them, then I can cultivate my content and go from there and write all the things, right? So right now I'm trying to write my LinkedIn posts and keep my content up before I know who my person is. And I know.
Well, and that's why, honestly, because what happens a lot is people are coming in and wanting to put out the fires. Like, I need to do LinkedIn, but we had not answered some of these key questions. So then it's the same dilemma that you're facing now. It's, who am I talking to?
Yeah. Right. And it needs to be everywhere. So at least it's good. Like, I have a friend who's, she is for outdoor travel companies and she's very specific and her website is gorgeous. And she did such a tremendous job with it. And mine is much more generalized. You can see immediately who she is and it's not for, and I'm not.
Yeah. She does what we call client signaling. This is a whole strategy that we have here in this program, client signaling. The idea is like, it's whispers, not shouts. And so that's why these markers are important. So what would it look like if you started going after, or, signaling clients that had a team that had budgeted either anywhere from 3x to $500 million, right? That had a project manager. I think it would not be that difficult to start to signal these people because you actually do know them. Like, you do know the challenges that they're facing.
I think it's the matter of getting it out of my head because I think I do. Like, I know when I talk to somebody and I'm like, oh, okay. But when I sit down and I start writing things, I'm like, it's tough. Yeah.
I wonder how much of this is also you're a marketer and it's easy to market for other people, but is it hard to do this for yourself? I don't know. Is there any part of that here?
Always. I mean, it's 100% more difficult to market your own business than it is.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to your website right now.
Okay, so here we started to look over her website copy and specifically the main headline, which started with the words, I help 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs, right? And then it continues, but pay attention to that 6, 7, and 8-figure entrepreneurs part. Okay, let's get back to it.
So through the lens of what we just talked about, does somebody making 6 figures fit your target?
No.
I'm curious, is somebody making the low 7s fit your target?
No.
Is it really 8?
It's really 8.
So that's one really simple fix that instantly, if I come to this, I look around, I see 8 figures or, however else maybe want to change this text. And I'm making $2 million and my budget for marketing is like, I don't know, $10,000 a month. I'm going to know that you're not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it's been a while.
And who's the you here? Who hires you?
Usually it's a CEO, or sometimes on a rare occasion, it's a COO.
Okay. I want to offer something like just a prompt that might help here. And it's this idea of you've gotten to this point and what? Let's fill in the blank. The CEO, she has gotten to this point, he has gotten to this point, and what did he assume or what did she assume would happen here? Because really the job here is not to talk about what you do or whatever. It's to really welcome them in.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I get it. I know the moment that you're in right now. Here's how I help. And that moment that you're in is, I think, what's missing through, a lot of people's websites and messaging and LinkedIn or whatever. And also here.
Yeah.
That's how you signal. That's how you signal these people in the moment that they are. So it's signaling the type of business. For you, it's also signaling the moment.
Yeah.
The exercise that we just went through about the markers, if you start to write with those in mind,
yeah,
and give yourself permission to write to a person,
mm-hmm,
that's how you can do this for yourself.
That's awesome. That's so funny because I've heard this, like who you're supposed to write to, or that you write to the perfect person or the ideal client. I mean, I read all the books on it, and this has been more impactful than, I don't know, I have a bookcase full of them. So thank you.
You are so welcome. I'm glad this has been helpful.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, everybody I work with has done so much learning.
Mm.
And I think reading a book and struggling with it on your own is one thing, but really getting into the weeds and like, okay, this is how we do it. This is the strategy.
Yeah.
It just unlocks something.
It does. It does. I think it's an aha moment. I actually do know who I'm talking to, but I need to talk to them more directly and in their language, which I know. And it's so weird. We hear it so many times, but it never really clicked for me. Mm-hmm. So this helped it click for me because I've heard this. I know it. Like I can teach it back to you, right? But I hadn't thought about it in terms of markers and how that works on websites.
Yeah, good. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad. I can see the wheels turning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's so much to unpack here. We got a little bit of therapy, we got some ideal client stuff, we got a little art, a little science. And I want to pull out one lesson that you can apply to your business. And it's this question of markers. What are the markers of the best clients for you? This question is part of the system that we use to identify your best future clients. And it's such a helpful thought starter that I wanted to share a bit more about it here because it's a really different way of finding your ideal client. Because, I have women who come to me and they've done the whole ideal client thing and they've tried it and they've worked through it and it either didn't work out or just sent them in the same spiral they've been in before. And that's because a lot of the ideal client stuff out there is actually pretty boring and unimaginative. And it's not all that helpful. And so when people think about how to attract clients that respect you, what they assume you have to do is flaunt your expertise. They'll say I have 25 years in, whatever industry, right? Or they'll lean on their credentials. Like you'll see this on LinkedIn a lot, like ex-Google, ex-Facebook, Harvard MBA, ex-McKinsey, whatever. But that doesn't actually attract the clients who actually respect you. So we approach it a different way, and this is one step in that system, the markers of the best clients for you. Because it's actually really hard to just come up with your ideal client. But we've all seen an ideal client. We've all worked with one, hopefully several. And when the right client comes into your orbit, you know it when you see it. So we try to figure out if you quote unquote know it when you see it, then what is it that you're seeing? Like what would you want to see to know that this is a great client for you? Those are the markers of the best clients for you. So we figure out the best clients for you, and then we develop an authentic marketing strategy to reach those clients. And then we give you a sales toolkit to help you lead a sale and actually close those clients. But it all starts with who are the best clients for you. And I'm saying best clients here instead of ideal clients because the best clients are the ones you can be the most successful with. And they're the ones who can be most successful with the services you're providing. Because the first step to being respected for the value you deliver is working with clients who can truly realize that value. Because if you've ever worked with clients who didn't totally understand the outcomes that you were going to help them achieve, or maybe who, couldn't implement the strategies, or who weren't willing to invest the money or the time to reach those outcomes that they themselves said they needed, and that's the reason they hired you, you know how frustrating that is. And if they're not in the best position to see the value that you can help them reach, then they're not going to receive or experience that value. And they're certainly not going to say that you helped them achieve that value. I talked to one of my clients about this in a previous episode. It's episode 57, about how she and her co-founder had this big agency experience. And as they were working together in their business, they were working with these small businesses and nonprofits. And they just felt like they were giving them too much and really overwhelming the client. And the client then couldn't really take what they had done together and run with it and be successful with it. And she said, I just feel like I'm giving them a racehorse when what they need is a mule. So check out that episode 57, and you can hear how we adjusted what she offered to really meet her clients where they are. But the point here is that oftentimes we're working with clients who aren't really the best positioned to be successful with all the goodness that we can bring them. And if that's the case, then they're not going to value our work as much as somebody or a client who could truly be as successful as they can possibly be with what we provide. Now, listen, I will say to any of my clients, you can take on any client at any time for any reason. Sometimes you take on clients because it seems interesting and you want to stretch yourself a bit. Sometimes you take on clients because you need the work. No one's going to shame you or whatever for taking on a client that's not the absolute best client. I'm certainly not. The goal is that over time, you increase the percentage of the best clients for you. So when you work with clients who can be the most successful with what you're offering and the ones that you can be the most successful with, and when they experience the value, they won't question the value and they won't question your expertise.